Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Executive Vice President of the Center for International Policy, former Foreign Policy Advisor to Bernie Sanders, Matt Duss. On the rather tumultuous scene in foreign policy, I mean, not just from our perspective, but from the rest of the world. Also on the program today, Canada imposes a 25% tariff on automotive imports into that country from this one. Striking back, China fires back, imposes an 84% tariff on U.S. goods. As markets slide, treasuries are now being sold off. And small businesses are fearing a tsunami. IRS head quits over having to share data with immigration cops. And if you think it's going to stop with immigration cops, I've got a tariff to sell you. Meanwhile, the AP wins reinstatement after a federal court finds Trump's violated its First Amendment rights. Trump White House freezes $1 billion in health and defense grants to Cornell, another $790 million for Northwestern. New report, it's up to 90% of the migrants sent to that El Salvador gulag had no criminal record. At least 90% now. Government judge gives the Trump administration until 5 p.m. today to produce evidence to support why Mahmoud Khalil should be deported, or he walks on Friday. Montana legislative vote to reject a bill criminalizing people who help trans kids get health care. And disgraced Ken Paxton to challenge deservedly disgraced John Cornyn in 2026, perhaps putting that Senate seat in play. And today marks 160 years ago, Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses Grant at Appomattox, ending the Civil War. And boy, did we not follow up on that properly. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emma is off today, and the hits keep coming. We are now entering the middle of the beginning of this trade war, which is we're seeing the first of countries impose or have a response to the tariffs that Trump imposed on this country. Already, people are just now starting to feel the impact of these tariffs. And we're going to see it in prices very, very quickly. Because, I mean, I can tell you, we have advertisers who, small businesses who are saying, like, the packaging that we use, that we would get from China has gone up. We haven't figured out how we're going to deal with it. But remember, if you buy, 1,000 little jars from China, and they're going to hold it at customs now. And let's say those jars cost $1 each. I don't know. I'm just making this up. And it's $1,000. Well, now customs is saying to you, hey, we need 104% of that would be what? $1,040 to release this stuff. Small businesses don't have a ton of cash lying around that they didn't anticipate a week and a half ago that they were going to need. So they're all rushing to their banks now to get an extension on their line of credit. And then at one point, they're going to start doing the numbers and they're going to be like, we got a problem here.
And some of them will turn to smugglers because that's what's going to be a response to this too. If these continue, is there's going to be smuggling because that's what the sort of stuff.
That's how the country was founded, incidentally. That was all about tariffs back in the day at that Boston Tea Party. But I want to be fair to the idea of these tariffs. Now, listen, again, I just want to repeat this. Our perspective has always been here is that tariffs in and of themselves, they're just a tool. And they're a tool to achieve an agenda. And generally, the way that tariffs are generally used, at least in modern times, as a mechanism in which to shield or build a domestic industry. Or maybe not even an industry, a specific, an industry. I would go that narrow. So like we want to make sure that we're producing enough steel in this country. We want to make sure that we're producing semiconductors. Or we realized during COVID that we have a problem in semiconductors. And if China shuts down, we're going to have no semiconductors, or we're not going to have any chips. And we're going to have no cars, and we're not going to have computers. And so we need to build that industry here. And so we will put tariffs on products like that coming into this country. But on the other hand, we'll also incentivize and build factories, like give money to build factories. Now, of course, the way you would sequence that would be we have a plan to build factories, to train workers to make this stuff, or whatever is involved. We're going to institute that plan, and it's going to take 6 months to a year, 2 years to get those factories built. And then we're going to put the squeeze on these products coming in so that this industry happens. Or maybe we roll it out a little bit. I mean, it's obvious how you sequence these things. The Trump administration didn't do any of that. It's not even clear what the goal is to any of this. But here to explain it to you, because none of us have the sort of the brain capacity to understand this. We need to bring in an expert, someone whose keen mind and love of ideas is able to wrap their heads around this and explain the one dynamic that you don't realize. If tariffs are so bad, why do they exist?
If tariffs are so bad, then why do they have them? So it might not be that tariffs are inherently horrible. Tariffs are horrible when you are on the receiving side of the bad end of the tariff. Trump is trying to tariff so we can eliminate tariffs. And we just told you what's happening in Vietnam and Argentina and Israel and Italy and a couple other countries, and apparently 50 other countries and the European Union that are now coming back to the table. So there's few people that are arguing for tariffs for the sake of tariffs. Yes, I want more tariffs, and I want them to tariff more and them to tariff more in the world.
We should say that all the reporting that is available says that these people are willing to negotiate, these different countries. Obviously, China has just levied a 104% reciprocal tariff against this. Canada has levied a tariff. But there are other countries that are interested in negotiating, Philippines, several others, that are basically saying, like, we're calling, but nobody's answering the phone.
I want to do the tariffs instead.
Dave is a smart guy. but I just like tariffs. I like tariffs. I've always liked tariffs. I want to read this quote that's going around from, I think it was a piece written about Gary Cohn. Gary Cohn was under the first Trump administration, Cohn was the Treasury, right? Or was he wasn't Commerce Secretary. I think it was Treasury. He was one of the early ones to leave the administration, I think. And this is a retelling of what Cohn said to Donald Trump. Why don't we manufacture things at home? Lindsay asked. We're a manufacturing country. I'm not sure who that refers to. But of course, the United States manufactured things, but reality did not match the vision in Trump's mind. The president clung to an outdated view of America: locomotives, factories with huge smokestacks, workers busy on assembly lines. Cohn assembled every piece of economic data available to show that American workers did not aspire to work in assembly factories. Each month, Cohn brought Trump the latest job openings and labor turnover survey called JOLTS, conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He realized he was being an a-hole by rubbing it in because each month was basically the same, but he didn't care. Mr. President, can I show this to you? Cohn fanned out the pages of data in front of the president. See, the biggest levers of levers, people who leave, of jobs, people leaving voluntarily, was from manufacturing. I don't get it, Trump said. Cohn tried to explain. I can sit in a nice office with air conditioning and a desk, or stand on my feet 8 hours a day. Which would you do for the same pay? Cohn added, people don't want to stand in front of a 2,000-degree blast furnace. People don't want to go into coal mines and get black lung. For the same dollars or equal dollars, they're going to choose to do something else. Trump wasn't buying it. Several times, Cohn just asked the president, why do you have these views? I just do. Trump replied, I've had these views for 30 years. Well, that doesn't mean they're right, Cohn said. I had the view for 15 years I could play professional football. It doesn't mean I was right. He was the chief economic advisor. I guess he wasn't, he was head of, the National Council of, all right, let's go back to Dave Rubin.
And Israel and Italy and a couple other countries, and apparently 50 other countries and the European Union that are now coming back to the table. So there's few people that are arguing for tariffs for the sake of tariffs. Yes, I want more tariffs, and I want them to tariff more and them to tariff more, and then we're all going to pay more for everything. I'm not really hearing much of that argument. But if tariffs are bad, then why do they all do it? So you might understand why the markets are struggling right now, because Trump is trying to even the playing field. I think I used this analogy last week. You ever play Monopoly when you're a kid?
Oh, pause it. Before we go into his dumb argument about evening the playing field, let's be clear. They're not even, the tariffs that we're imposing on these other countries are not even one-to-one on the tariffs that other countries have. There's a reason why we can't sell F-250s in Europe. It is because the roads are smaller. You would not be able to drive an F-250 or an F-150 for that matter, or really almost any one of every single pickup truck that is made in America, short of maybe an old Ford Ranger.
Driving a Cybertruck in Bruges.
You cannot drive through these cities in Europe. The roads are just too small. But that is factored into the tariff that we levy on them, because they consider that a non-tariff trade barrier. And there's a whole host of things like that that are encountered in this. And so we're not even putting reciprocal tariffs on them. But Rubin doesn't understand, because Rubin doesn't care. I mean, he's just trying to justify this.
Well, you haven't let him do his metaphor yet.
Okay, but here's his metaphor. And this metaphor is to explain how you even things out.
this analogy last week. You ever play Monopoly when you're a kid and you're playing Monopoly, you got a couple friends around the Monopoly board, and somehow the guy who's also the banker always has a little more cash than everybody. He can somehow buy all those hotels on Baltic Avenue and turn it into Atlantic Avenue.
Who in this analogy is the guy who has access to more cash than anybody else? Who is that? If the Monopoly board and all the players are the world, who is the guy who has the most cash? I mean, it's America, right? Is that what it's? So that guy is America. I'm just trying to figure out the analogy here.
I mean, Monopoly, a game, very consciously an analogy itself of monopoly capitalism. So it's hard to sort of say, well, it's other countries and it's about tariffs. No, they were showing how capitalism works.
Okay, but put aside what the actual game is, because it's not that deep of it's really just about a game for him. He doesn't understand what Monopoly is about. He hasn't made that connection. But there's somebody who has control of the bank. That would be, who controls the world currency?
Well, Singapore, clearly.
It's the United States. All right, so let's just go back and follow this. The United States is the one who controls the world's currency. Go ahead.
So the banker always has a little more cash than everybody. He can somehow buy all those hotels on Baltic Avenue and turn it into Atlantic Avenue. And then you start realizing, oh, every time I turn around or pee, this guy's taking a little cash. That's basically what's been happening here. And then what happens? Then you throw the board, you hit him with it, you force some of those hotels down his throat. We've all been there. That's what's been going on here. So unless you want Trump to do that to you, come to the table, people. Rumble Premium, and then more on just the general state of lunacy.
So he doesn't realize in his own analogy that we're the one who's getting hit with the board.
And the reason that they keep the money is that we're buying their things. It's not some sneaky,
Somebody on the IM said, obviously, the banker in this metaphor is naturally transgender athletes. Right. Of course.
Not the richest man in the world who has factories.
Let's just take a peek into what's going on in the real world, the one that Dave Rubin does not inhabit. The one where even like his mixed metaphors or improper analogies don't exist. This is the one where people have to buy sneakers.
The spot here, but just ballparking. If a $100 pair of sneakers costs $100 made currently, whether it's in China, Vietnam, or Indonesia, if it was made in the U.S., how much would that pair of sneakers cost?
$300 or $400 easily. Yeah. In fact, we've even just looked at the tariffs coming into place tonight at midnight. A $150 pair of running shoes will be $230, right? Wow. And that's coming from overseas sources without U.S. labor.
Tariffs.
That's just with the tariffs. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Folks will feel that, Matt.
Oh, yeah, I think they will, unless they don't realize that somebody's playing Monopoly somewhere and taking money from the till.
Yeah, good luck. There's going to be a robot factory that's going to spring up to make all your running shoes.
That's the other thing. Like, they're going around saying there's going to be robot like, what? Can we do this in a half an hour? What we really need, this is. I just want to pitch this one thing because I've heard nobody talk about this. We get a huge 3D printer, and it prints an entirely different world.
Yeah, who needs to go to Mars? Just make another world.
Yeah. We could just make a whole nother planet where we're the only people on it, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, like New Balance actually does have some made in UK and made in America lines. And I'm not even sure of how they source all the materials to assemble those, but they make them in the United States. They're $200 to $250 shoes already.
Yes, and to have to build the new capacity to do, I mean, this is just absurd. Also, the other thing that you should understand about this is that when the initial inputs into a supply chain go up, so for instance, let's say you have you sell food products and you buy your bags, maybe some of your ingredients from China. And that goes up, well, 104%. You add that cost to your manufacturing, you sell it to a distributor. The way that the distributor takes their cut, it's not a fixed figure. It is a percentage. So when you raise your price, it exponentially gets raised. If something I produced cost me $5 yesterday, and today it cost me 10, when it gets to the distributor, they don't just say, okay, well, we take 10%, we're going to take that 50 cents. They say we take 10%, that's another $1. So that product that was $5 yesterday and cost me $10 to make today, now instead of costing $5.50, costs $11. And then when that distributor sends it to the retail outlet, they also have a percentage markup. It's not a fixed figure. We don't add 25 cents. We add 25%. So these prices will exponentially grow. All right. Well, I guess we'll see.
I'm not sure who I believe, Dave Rubin or the other guy.
Oh, the guy on CNN?
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Well, he's just a footwear distributor retailer.
He's got tariff derangement syndrome.
And here's the other thing. I also have no doubt that that guy who's on CNN is like, we have an excuse to raise prices again. And so everybody's going to raise their prices. Then they're going to say it's the tariffs. Because here's another secret. Corporate America don't give a F. If they feel they can get away with charging you more because they have the cover of these tariffs, they'll do that too.
Yeah, the big corporations are going to do that, and the smaller ones are going to die out because they don't have the capacity to.
They all remember how they made money hand over fist during COVID, and they could jack up prices and keep them inflated for longer, even after their logistics issues went away, because they had the cover of COVID. They had a built-in excuse. And that created a little bit more elasticity on what people were willing to spend. In a moment, we'll be talking to Matt Duss, Executive Vice President of the Center for International Policy and former foreign policy advisor to Bernie Sanders. First, a couple of words from our sponsors. This one is one of my favorite sponsors. I've been using them for, 10 years. And then they came and wanted to just totally coincidentally wanted to advertise. And I was like, absolutely. Fast Growing Trees. It is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and over 2 million happy customers in the U.S. I have bought apple trees from Fast Growing Trees. I have bought Korean pear trees, chokeberry trees, a bloomerang. Do you remember that one, Matt? The bloomerang? It is a lilac that blooms once in the spring and then comes back around in July. But they have all sorts of they have so many varieties. And that's the thing that's better than a big box store. You go to a big box store, you got 3 types of apples. I'm not going to disparage, a Gala or a Fuji, but, like a Delicious or whatever. That's not what you want. You want to get the right trees for your area where you're growing. You want to get all sorts of advice about how to grow these things. Fast Growing Trees is the place to get all of that. They curate thousands of plants. You can find the perfect fit for your specific climate, your specific location, needs. They have 24/7 care advice available. It doesn't matter if you want privacy or shade or beauty or fruit. Fast Growing Trees will help you out. You can talk to a plant expert about your soil type, about your landscape design, how to take care of your plants, everything else you need. No green thumb required, and no dirt spilling out in the back of your Subaru. You can also grow stuff in your house too, like avocado plants, fig plants, lemon, and obviously they have tons of other houseplants. This spring, they have the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. Listeners to our show get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code MAJORITY at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code majority at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com. Code is majority. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Folks, next sponsor is Shopify. And when we started this program years ago, I was very, very hesitant to do a merch store because I didn't want to, I thought it was going to be a huge hassle. And then we got Shopify, and then ba-boom. Shop.majorityreportradio.com. We have all our merch there. It is so easy to use. It can be totally intimidating to start a shop like that, but it was much, much easier because of Shopify. I mean, frankly, the whole business was scary for me. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands that are just getting started. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Shopify packed with AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, even enhance your product photography. It is so easy, and the beauty is it's so scalable. So if our merch, for whatever reason, started to really, really take off, I mean, our main business is podcasting, but if our merch took off, we'd be able to handle it. Shopify, it's all in one. You can create email and social media campaigns. Shopify integrates into all the social media sites and IRL. Best yet, Shopify is your commerce experts with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business into cha-ching with Shopify on your side. Huh? How's that? Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling at shopify.com/majority. Go to shopify.com/majority. Shopify.com/majority. Lots of cash on that one. We will put the link and the description in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Matt Duss. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining us in studio. He's the only people that ever come into studio. The only people that we actually allow into studio.
Thank you.
Executive Vice President of the Center for International Policy and former Foreign Policy Advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders, Matt Duss. Matt, as always, a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks very much. No, I think the first time a couple years ago. You can't keep me away from the studio now.
Yeah,
so.
That's it. We are the only person we let in, outside of, occasionally the people who work here. And, but we've got a lot of things happening, obviously, on the foreign policy front. The most prominent of which is, I don't know that we've ever really had any conversation in the many years that we have talked about foreign policy. Have we talked about tariffs, except for maybe in passing, and certainly not in the context of what is now a burgeoning trade war? China has announced that as of tomorrow, they will put a 84% tariff on any goods that are coming in from the United States to China. That would be our top 5 are soybeans, aircraft and engines, integrated circuits, pharmaceuticals, and petroleum products.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Farmers are going to get hit hard, obviously, with this. And of course, we also have what appears to be 104% tariffs on Chinese goods coming in here. Aside from the turmoil that it's gonna cause in this country economically, and I would imagine in other countries around the globe, and we're seeing weird stuff in the treasury market, particularly in terms of the dynamic with the stock market. Leaving that aside, what does this do in terms of like changing the physics, it feels like, in the international space?
Right. Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said about tariffs, I mean, in Trump's first term, after decades of this kind of economic theology of free trade that saw tariffs as this no-no, Trump kind of reintroduced this idea of using tariffs as a tool. I love tariffs. Trade wars are very easy to win. But that was pretty tightly focused on China and maybe a few other places. Now it's a trade war with everyone, based on this weird formula that they came up with based on trade imbalances, regardless of what tariffs other countries have on us. And it really is just a massive restructuring of the U.S.-led global trade order. And leading to what? I don't know. That is what is part of what's so concerning here, is that he does not seem to have like a theory of the case beyond we'll do this and then something will happen and then things will be better. I mean, he's just using these as a blunt instrument to get better deals bilaterally with all of these countries. I can't see it. I don't think anyone has offered a real explanation of how he gets from A to B to C here.
Yeah, it's not even clear where C is. And just to sort of walk through a little bit, like you mentioned, Trump imposed tariffs on China in his first term. I think they were about 10%, and I think they were more or less across the board. Biden expanded these a little bit. Maybe they weren't, Trump's tariffs were with steel and aluminum coming from China. And Biden expanded these a little bit, but also essentially provided, a trade war goes two ways, obviously.
Right.
And so when you're keeping certain products out, the idea is that you want to essentially, onshore these products, either, in terms of the way that they're processed or manufactured. And you need to provide for both. Right. There needs to be like a sort of stick and carrot type of relationship to growing an industry in there. And we had that under Biden. We have the largest expansion of manufacturing jobs that we've had. But there isn't that second part here. And what also strikes me weird, I mean, aside from, and this is, at this point, everybody's saying the same thing. Like there's nothing that comes after the and. Right. We're going to do this and nobody knows what the second part of that is, because it can't onshore. Like, he said yesterday, pharmaceuticals. It's not like there's pharmaceutical factories that are just sitting around waiting for demand.
Waiting to be revved up, exactly.
Yeah, you got to build these things, and they're not. They got to be pretty clean apparently, because these are contaminations and stuff like this. But I'm thinking to, Obama, the last thing he tried to do before he left was the TPP, which was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was essentially to try and isolate China and get all of Asia but China essentially into one trade regime that was to inhibit Chinese, I guess, hegemony. And that seems to be like, we've just thrown all that out the window.
Well, I mean, that basic idea, if Trump's goal is to limit China's economic growth or to use these tools as a weapon against China, you do want to have allies. He's making that much more difficult. Now, personally, I have concerns about China and their policies, but I don't think that limiting Chinese growth is a way to frame this. And I'll just go back to Obama. I mean, the TPP, I think, and this was one of the reasons I think Trump won, is because he really came in and said this economic model, that this kind of theology that all of Washington and the global trade, the global economic smart guys have subscribed to for the past decades has not worked for us. We need something different. Now, that basic conjecture is right. Bernie said the same thing. Now, Bernie has a different idea of how we should fix this system. But since 2016, Washington has been going through these stages of grief of, okay, what did we get wrong? Do we need to change, give Biden some credit because his administration did recognize, okay, we need to build a post-neoliberal, global economic order, and started to do that. Trump just seems to have no idea other than we're going to use trade now as a weapon to get things that I want. And meanwhile, everything else that was bad about that trade order, weakening the state, weakening the social safety net, getting the government, essentially pulling the wiring out of the administrative state, those were also things that were bad about the global trade order, and Trump is tripling down on that.
That's the weird thing, is that there's like a third thing that, the problem with the TPP, you could have two separate problems with it. One is like, why do we have to aggressively isolate China?
Right.
But the mechanism in which that was done with the TPP, which was the most problematic in my estimation, was we're giving up all sovereignty to corporations.
That's exactly right.
In this international dispute, ISDS. I can't remember.
The problem with free trade is not free trade. It's that it prevents states, governments from intervening on behalf of their own workers. That's the problem with it.
And this is sort of like, it's almost as if Trump has found a third way to do the bad things
to take the worst parts.
To take the worst parts of both of those things and put them together. So what does this do to, and then I want to move to sort of specific areas around the globe, but what does this do to foreign policy more broadly speaking? Because it seems to me that there's going to be a lot of countries who are going to say, and, I think we talked about this in 2016, and through the years of the Trump years, which was, the rest of the world has to say, like, okay, maybe you go to, you after Trump, it's going to be somebody else, but there's a problem in your society, like that you would go to Trump, and
that's right.
You could go back to Trump or somebody worse, and it turned out to be Trump, and worse. It seems to me that in the context of trade, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to just say, like, we're going to go into a different order.
Yes,
and that's going to have implications not just in terms of trade, but everything else.
Right. We're going to seek to continue multilateralism just without the United States, and in many ways defensively against the United States. We've already seen this happening with U.S. adversaries, right? The kind of aggressiveness, even pre-Trump, that the United States after 9/11 started to use sanctions tools, the Treasury, secondary sanctions to punish countries, to punish terrorist groups, but also countries that were seen as not doing what we wanted on those issues. We started to see bandwagoning and alternative sources and possibly currencies, but now our friends are doing it, right? Because it was like, okay, fool me once with Trump, Joe Biden came back and said America's back. Everybody chill out. We got this under control. Their illusions are being dashed now. Probably too late, but you definitely see that happening. And so even if we were to get after this a different, probably, I don't know if I want to say more normal administration, because I don't even know what normal is after this. But we are past going back. In some ways, listen, this might be controversial now, but I'll say that's probably good, because I think
I was just going to say, like, I mean, I'm not convinced that, maybe our time of being the world's sort of like cop and, conductor, maybe we were done with that.
Right. I mean, I think it took far too long for this memo to land. I mean, Donald Trump is in so many ways a symptom, as well as a cause, but a symptom of a failed, corrupt set of institutions. So yeah, I mean, it's challenging, in some ways scary, but to think through, okay, what does that new order look like? What's America's role in it? But ultimately, we need an economic policy that does what Trump says he wants to do, which is protect American workers. And I'm just not seeing that right now.
Right. I mean, I am all for, being USA number, 2, 3. Okay. I mean, I'm not convinced that that's going to mean it, except for the fact that he's also trashing our economy. Like, we don't have what he's doing. I can imagine a scenario where, like, this is a 7-year plan or an 8-year plan. And we need to, like, flood the country with, funds to make this transition. But
We're not
without
seeing
it,
that.
he's doing it in 2 weeks, and he's doing it sort of the second part first.
Right. And he seems, and this tends to be one kind of consistent through line, is his, deep suspicion of multilateralism. He believes in just bilateral agreements. The concept of multilateralism, he sees that as a way for other countries to gang up on the United States. When he talks about the European Union, I mean, he has said this. He said the European was created to screw the United States. That's why he's opposed to it. So this is what he's talking about now. I'm going to hit all these countries with these massive tariffs and then go back to them one by one and renegotiate deals that will be good for us, i.e. me.
It also seems to be the sort of the same strategy that Elon Musk is doing. We're going to fire everybody and then find out which people control the nuclear codes or the pandemic stuff. And then, if we can get them back, we get them back.
Exactly. We're going to take apart the government and then figure out what everything does.
So amidst this sort of like moving target, like how do you formulate, is there any type of foreign policy, broadly speaking? I want to ask you again about the specifics, but how do you formulate a foreign policy when it seems like you not only are the people that you want or the other parties that you want to develop a policy towards always in flux, but you're in such dramatic flux?
Yes. Right. I mean, you have to try and pay attention to other things that are happening. There's a lot of crises around the world, some of which the U.S. is deeply implicated, but that, the challenge of, separating the signal from the noise here is the name of the game. And it's always difficult, but coming up with good policy at a time when Trump is in the process of destroying so much wealth, and not just, people talk about, the stock traders and the very wealthy. It's not just that, as you know. I mean, these are workers' retirement accounts. These are, not just the very wealthy who are being hurt by this. So it is hard.
And we should say, in a week or two, I mean, I think we were saying this, we're going to have a much better notion of just who's going to be hurt by this.
That's right.
Farmers starting tomorrow are going to be in a full-on panic.
Yes.
And, small businesses, when they starting to see wait a second, the stuff I've got coming in from China, whatever, the plastic bags or whatever it is that I've got, they're not releasing them unless I pay twice the amount that I thought they were going to cost.
And the thing that kind of frightens me about this is that when this really hits and Trump starts to, if this outrage starts to penetrate his bubble, what does he do? How does he try to distract or externalize that, right? And here I'm thinking about that notorious comment from Fareed Zakaria back in, I think it was April 2017, when Trump struck Syria. And Fareed Zakaria goes, Donald Trump became president today.
Was he? I thought there was a half a dozen people who said
They
that.
said variations on that. But what that taught Donald Trump is that when you get into trouble, a way to make Washington like you is to press this button.
Right.
So the question is, what horrible misadventure does he consider doing, to make people liking him again? Because unfortunately, that's still part of Washington's sickness. It's starting up a war, everybody rally around the flag.
I mean, that is, a sickness I think a lot of countries have, frankly, is my sense.
Yes,
is that
not unique to us.
The way that you create that nationalism is to create, but it doesn't feel like, I mean, let's talk about Iran and in the Middle East, and then we'll work our way down through into the Middle East from Iran, and then maybe swing back up to Ukraine.
We'll do a tour. All right.
It seems like Iran would be the most likely place that we would strike at this point. I mean, we've been striking Yemen for 2 weeks straight now, and to the point where I'm reading stuff where naval commanders are saying we should have used the cheaper bombs.
Yes.
I mean, literally.
Yeah, running through standoff weapons here to, little effect, apparently. As, again, no one who's been watching the effort to bomb the crap out of the Houthis for the past literally 10 years should be surprised by this. I mean, if you read that signal chain, the plan was quite literally, we're going to do this but harder, and that will work. And it has not worked.
Why? I'm just out of curiosity. Why has why has it been so hard to stop the Houthis?
I mean,
Saudi Arabia was bombing them.
The Emiratis,
we were
supporting that.
Providing all the support.
Exactly. Intelligence, air refueling, weapons, all the stuff. They're dug in. It's their country.
Right. Right.
That is always something you need to keep in mind. And so trying to do this from the air or through, cruise missiles and such, it has a very bad record of working. You can do damage, certainly. You could hit certain facilities. You can kill a lot of people.
We certainly seem to have killed a lot of civilians there.
We unfortunately are good at doing that, but dealing with the problem by bombing it is not something that really seems to work.
So Iran would be the next candidate, it appears to me, and it certainly had been feeling like for a while like between us bombing Yemen and Israel going back into Gaza and going into Syria and also sort of sporadic attacks on Lebanon after the wake of their mini war, I guess, with Hezbollah. But it also appears that Trump now has decided that he wants to get back into the deal, essentially, that he crashed 10 years ago.
Or some new version of that deal. Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty remarkable set of statements he made in the Oval Office with Netanyahu, and I have to say...
This was yesterday.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Netanyahu sit there as Trump basically said, we're going to have direct talks with Iran, which are a good idea. I mean, we should be talking to Iran. We have real issues with them. We should be talking to them. Obviously, you want these talks to be as well prepared as possible. I mean, we saw this with North Korea in Trump's first term. Talking with North Korea, talking with Kim Jong-un is a good idea. Unfortunately, he did not seem very well prepared. He just went, he did a photo op. What did we get out of it? I don't think we got much out of it. So I hope we won't simply see a rerun of that. But as a basic principle, yes, the way to deal with Iran's nuclear program is through a negotiated agreement. Trump tore one up back in 2018. He seems interested in getting a new one. I think, you mentioned the way things seem to be going. We seem to be preparing for some kind of action, B-2 bombers over in the region, another carrier strike group. Was this just signaling to Iran that we are serious about option B if they don't want to do option A and talk? Perhaps. But it does seem from statements coming from Tehran, from the Supreme Leader, from the IRGC, that they are interested or more interested than they have been in the recent past. And I think that's positive.
I mean, it also occurs to me now in 2025 that Iran has been incredibly, I don't know what the word is. It ranges from reluctant to considered in terms of not building a nuclear weapon because they have been supposedly on the brink of this for what seems like since the invasion of Iraq.
Yes, right. Yeah, I mean, I think the first reports, I believe it was 2002 when that intelligence was publicized, that there's evidence that they had a nuclear weapons program. But our intelligence community has assessed that they have not made that decision to go forward. So they're keeping that option open. But they have not, countries that get a bomb usually rush for it. It's a small sample set, but that's what the sample set is. And at the same time, Iran has been weakened by some of the actions that Israel has taken with U.S. support. They lost a major ally, or their major ally Hezbollah has been weakened. I think the loss of Assad was a huge deal. Again, that was done by, with Turkey's support, not Israel. But the loss of the Assad regime was a huge deal. So, yeah, I can understand why they...
What did the Assad regime do for Iran in terms of strengthening it?
I mean, it received incredible amounts of support, funding, but also just physically as a land passage from Iran to Iraq through Syria into Lebanon to resupply and support Hezbollah. That's gone. Now, I think the danger is you always have kind of this little chorus of hawks in Washington for whom the time to bomb Iran is always now. And their argument is, well, Iran is weakened. Now is the time to really do it. And I think now is the time to actually take talks with Iran seriously, when they could sign on to an enforceable and solid set of concessions around their nuclear program. Because if they get the sense, given how they have been weakened, have lost some real allies in the region, a nuclear deterrent looks much, much more attractive to Iran right now. And I don't like that equation. So I think making it clear to Iran that they can get security another way would be the best move for the U.S. right now.
So let's turn towards Ukraine. Donald Trump had promised that he was going to end this in the first week of his administration, maybe the first day.
It'll be very easy, he told us.
It would be very easy. Well, I guess before we get to Ukraine, let's go to, I mean, you mentioned Netanyahu sitting in the Oval Office with Trump. We had a brief, essentially like ceasefire, I guess. Israel has now seems to have ratcheted up its assault on Gaza at a time where I think like the Palestinians living, the Gazans are completely exhausted, and it feels like they have just. I mean, I can't even imagine now. We're having jets bomb tents. Israel just seems to be paired with the and I don't know. I mean, I have felt this is the case for over a year, but it seems they are completely unabashedly. Like there's no longer any pretense of what they're doing.
Yeah.
It has been over a month since they've let in aid.
Right.
We're getting reports from the UN now of like this is just it's incredibly dire.
Yeah, Guterres called it a killing field. He used those words. And
there does not seem to be any international pressure whatsoever because even when Biden, who was abysmal on this, Biden felt pressure, theoretically, right? I mean, he didn't respond to it, but there was some pressure. I would argue that it actually caused Harris was one of the big reasons why she lost her election. But there is no pressure on Trump, it seems like, at all, other than from Miriam Adelson. And so is there any constraining Israel in this instance at all?
Unfortunately, right now, no. I mean, because any pressure, the only meaningful pressure on Israel was going to come from the United States. I mean, I think that was why there was so much pressure and attention on Biden. The enormous intelligence, arms support, diplomatic, political support. The United States and, Europe can do things, but Europe just tends not to do things if the United States doesn't go first or at least give them a green light. And Biden simply would not do that. Right now, as you said, there's no pretense anymore. Back in the early days of the war, they would bomb a hospital and be like, Hamas was there. We're sorry. Here's all the reasons we had to kill all these civilians. And now they don't even bother. It's just going forward. I mean, they killed, 15 aid workers, then buried them. Like in a mass grave. They essentially assassinated them, and they buried them in a mass grave. And only because it was all caught on film, they're like, okay, whoops, we're looking into it. They would,
And the idea of that video existing like 6 months ago, or a year ago, something so explicit, but it barely makes a ripple in the news.
Yes, they have slowly, methodically, and successfully rewritten the rules of war, essentially. With U.S. support, and now with Trump, he came in, he sent Witkoff over, pressured Bibi to sign the ceasefire back in January. We had a couple months of that, and let's understand the terms of that ceasefire was that phase 1 will continue until phase 2 is agreed upon. The ceasefire was supposed to continue as the parties to continue to negotiate. Netanyahu abrogated that.
He broke that ceasefire.
That's exactly right.
What is Europe? I mean, I feel like Europe is about to sort of turn against Israel, but that it's not going to be terribly relevant.
No, unfortunately not. And I see some pockets of resistance there, but in general, I mean, every time the Starmer government in the UK says something critical, they kind of walk it back the next day. Germany, unfortunately, is completely, is kind of focused on arresting and beating up, pro-Palestinian protesters in Germany. So really, it's hard to say who is going to lead that opposition.
I mean, I guess I guess I was just looking at yesterday, or I guess today it was Starmer had said, we need a probe of the killing of all these, emergency
Yes.
workers.
We
But
need a probe. Yes. Let's have a probe.
yes, I guess that would be involved.
Yeah,
Let's watch this video.
Yeah, let's
again.
exactly. Well,
I mean,
we have it on video.
I honestly
Why
don't
we
know how
probe
much
that?
more evidence you could possibly have in any
Yes.
instance, and just horrific.
Yes, let's probe the person who took this video and find out their true feelings.
And we should remind people that person is dead, shot in the head
Yes.
by Israeli soldiers.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's turn to Ukraine for a moment. There's been what feels like some type of stalemate for a while. Trump had Zelensky here, I guess it was a month ago now.
Yes.
Where it felt like a very staged moment where J.D. Vance was brought in to basically yell at Zelensky for not dressing properly and for not being thankful enough. And it all felt like some type of kayfabe thing. I don't think Zelensky was in on it, but I think he understood these guys have to sort of like make it some type of show because they're not really, there wasn't a dramatic shift in policy that I think people anticipated.
Well, I mean, initially, I think there was. I mean, I don't know how staged it was. I mean, I'll say J.D. Vance clearly had a plan.
Right.
I think, I know that Zelensky was advised both by his own people and by members of Congress who support Ukraine to say the minimum possible in this Oval Office meeting. Do not allow yourself to be provoked, and then negotiate in private afterward at the lunch. Unfortunately, he allowed himself to be provoked. And again, it's hard to criticize him given what he's endured, given the fact that he's sitting there in a room with all of Trump and Trump's flunkies all around him. And then it seems as soon as J.D. Vance introduced this idea that Zelensky was being disrespectful, that's what completely set everything off, because that's the thing. And Vance knows this, is that's what Trump can't tolerate. So yeah, that went poorly. Zelensky then, I think, understood that he had to show very quickly that he was not the problem. He is ready to sign a deal. He is ready to negotiate peace. And I think he signaled that very effectively. And that did what he wanted to do, which is to put the onus back on Putin, frankly, where it belongs. And I think that's where we are now, because Ukraine has made clear that they are ready to talk. And Putin and Russia, they're the ones who are like, well, we'll talk after Zelensky's gone. We'll talk after all Ukrainians are standing on one foot. He's introducing all kinds of bizarre conditions.
What is how much pressure? I mean, does Putin have in a domestic pressure to do anything? I mean, what is the status? It feels like there is just a stalemate there, and then I want to get to this thing about the Chinese soldiers.
I don't know what pressure Putin feels domestically. He has pretty tight control over his own domestic situation. I mean, I think he has a conception of his own legacy and Russia's security and what that requires. And it was true 2 years ago, a year ago. I think it's true today. That requires, erasing Ukraine as an independent sovereign state, either through installing a Russian-controlled government or just a more pliable Ukrainian president who is not Zelensky. And that is not something that Ukraine's going to agree to.
And do we have a sense of what the Ukrainian people want? I mean, there was a narrative that was being pushed by the Trump and the right. It felt like a month ago that Zelensky was forcing his people into this meat grinder and against their will, and he was a dictator, they were saying, and then that just sort of went away with whatever deal Zelensky said to. I mean, is it really that straightforward that it's just a question of Zelensky basically made Trump feel like he was daddy, and then daddy just said, okay, all is forgiven? I mean,
there was a method to it. Clearly, they were using all these tactics to put pressure on Zelensky to come to the negotiating table, because I think Trump genuinely wants to be able to broker a Russia-Ukraine peace deal.
And Trump didn't realize that Putin was probably the problem here?
Perhaps he didn't. I mean, Trump does have his own view. He thinks he understands Putin. I mean, some people say he admires him. I think there is some evidence of that, although I don't want to overstate it. But let's remember, he has a pretty bad impression of Zelensky from the first term as well.
Right.
So he's not positively predisposed to Volodymyr Zelensky. But I think, for the time being, Zelensky seems to have dealt with his Trump problem. Internally, to your question, I think we have seen public opinion slowly weakening as the war goes on. I don't think that's totally surprising. It's always been weaker, as the closer you get to the front, the Ukrainians who are having to endure the most of this warfare. You also do have, Ukraine has been careful about the age of conscription. They don't want to be conscripting all of their young and younger men. They do want to have a population into the future. And so that also contributes to a sense of resentment, who's having to fight, who's not having to fight, who's trying to avoid fighting, and who's getting away with it, who's bribing. So yes, there is, a tense political situation internally, but I think all evidence shows that Zelensky still is seen as a legitimate, democratically elected president.
What to be made of? Apparently, they have captured two presumably Chinese soldiers who have Chinese credit cards and an ID. I mean, what do we make of that?
Yeah. I mean, they captured two and fought a group of 6, is my understanding. The Chinese government has said these are independent, essentially Chinese mercenaries. I think China has been trying to make itself part of the solution here, at the same time continuing to support pretty massively Russia's effort. So they're both part of the problem and part of the solution, but wanting to be a major global player to say that we can help broker peace. But this is going to complicate that too, which is why I think they've been, pretty quick to try and say that we had nothing to do with this.
Well, if I know that there were 2 Chinese soldiers captured and that they were fighting 6 others, it feels like that's on purpose. Like there's a lot of different ways you could respond to finding, to capturing these guys, which is like unlikely. China is sending 6 guys to fight,
right?
And unlikely that they're going to be in this type of position. Like I imagine we have American military over there, but they're not, on the front lines fighting. That they're doing, support stuff or something that. So I would imagine if China was participating, they would have something similar. So what is Zelensky trying to do?
Right.
With that?
No, I think he's clearly trying to use this to push China to play a less destructive role. But I think, as you noted, that is what's interesting about where these Chinese soldiers were captured. I mean, we've seen North Korean soldiers involved in the war, but they've been in Russia. They've been in Kursk as part of the effort to retake the territory that Ukraine invaded. The fact that these Chinese soldiers were caught in Ukraine is quite notable. And I think Zelensky is using that to put some pressure on China to do what? I'm not quite sure.
Does that also tell us something? I mean, in the event that they are mercenaries, which it seems most likely to me, that the mercenaries are like that Russia needs mercenary fighters there?
Yeah, I mean, that does seem kind of sketchy to me. Again, I'm very skeptical. I mean, China does have pretty tight control over its military and over its industries, including potentially its own mercenary industry. So yeah, this excuse doesn't really ring true. We need to find out more. I mean, were these quote unquote observers who got cornered, found themselves in combat that they were not supposed to be in, and tried to fight their way out? I'm not sure.
What else have we left on the table, Matt? I mean, it feels like everything's moving in so many directions, and from our perspective, at least, the sort of the biggest player is not moving on any trajectory that is like plotted. It just feels like, one of those. I got a cat toy for my cat that you just press the button and the thing just stops and goes and runs all. I mean, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the only kind of consistent approach, and I said this before, I mean, a lot of people would criticize, Trump as a, quote, isolationist. And I thought that was always clearly false. He is, I mean, I think at the end of this, we're going to wish Trump was an isolationist. what we are seeing is the kind of most unbound, unconstrained, aggressive assertion of American unilateralism on all fronts, on the potential use of the military, on trade, obviously, but also you see it with the way, and there's a through line here: trade. We want to get a better deal. We're getting ripped off. That is, Trump's. He says that about everything, domestic and foreign. The system is rigged. We're getting ripped off. See this with the way he talks about NATO, the way he talks about Europe, is that the U.S., by virtue of his enormous power, deserves more tribute. And I'm going to go out there and get that tribute.
It feels like we are one event away, and maybe it's in the context of trade, but I don't know what, from the world saying, wait a second, paper tiger, and then it's off to the races. Am I just...
No, I mean, I think if people start to think that we are better off for our own security, for our own future prosperity, choosing different allies and investing in a different system than the one that's led or largely led and guided by the United States, as they are starting to do now, that's a very different world.
And I can't help but think that we're starting to see that in the Treasury bond market, but I'm not sure I understand that market enough.
Yeah, note
people
to
are
self,
starting to talk.
Read about
Treasury bonds. Yes. Matt Duss, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back in a moment. We are back. Sam Seder, Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. We're going to head into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. Of course, our expenses have gone up because of the tariffs, but we are maintaining the cost of our memberships.
We're going to eat the whole cost.
We're going to eat the entire cost of the tariffs. Of course, I'm joking. None of our costs have gone up. In fact, we're going to be selling off a lot of our RCA audio cords for...
If you need micro USB cords.
Exactly. If you're looking for 1440 FireWire for your Mac, stuff's going to get expensive. We're going to talk about it in the funnish half. The fun half today, we're going to discount all the tariffs. 104% more fun half today. Quality, not quantity. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can join the Majority Report by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show, free of commercials, but you get the fun half. I would imagine we're going to have some problem with advertising going forward in the coming months. Both our native and, YouTube, who knows? So if you have the means, support the program. If you don't have the means and you still want access to the fun half, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Put in help with fun half, and we'll work it out with you. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, Left Reckoning last night, Jonathan Ben-Menachem on to talk about his work, academic work at Columbia, talking about mass incarceration and also about the last year or so of protest and who actually runs a university. So interesting conversation there. We also talked about Trump's new panicking word, which is everyone who thinks this might be bad, what's happening with the market.
If you're a Republican who is panicking.
Don't be a panican. So a lot of panicans out there. And check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. We're close to 50,000 subs on YouTube and 1,000 on Patreon. So check us out.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle.